Hey, this is Kenny Mayne. This is not my podcast. I'm just the introductory voice doing a favor for an old friend. He somehow thinks this is going to help his success. We'll find out. I sure hope so, though, because I've known Keith Simons since we were like 10 or 11 years old. We played boys club football together back in Federal Way, Washington. Then we played against each other in junior high and high school. He went on to college. I went on to college. He went on to coach college and then tutor quarterbacks pretty much the rest of his life. And he got so deep and nerdy into the art of quarterbacking that he decided to start a podcast called QB Unfiltered. There will be far better quarterbacks than I as guests on this show, but I'm just here to say, listen, you might learn something.
This is QB Unfiltered. I'm Coach Keith Simons. It's Flashback Friday, recounting 50 years of playing and coaching football. Tonight, no Lone Star beer. It's 1981. Idaho State University blew through the national playoffs, 1AA national playoffs. We beat University of Rhode Island. We beat South Carolina State. And now we're headed to Texas, Wichita Falls, Texas, to play Eastern Kentucky University for the 1AA National Championship. Now, our coaches were really smart, and one of the things that they did with this trip was they brought us down a day earlier than what most teams would do. So we left early in the morning on Thursday out of Pocatello and flew into Wichita Falls, Texas. Now, Wichita Falls is north of Dallas. It's just inside the Oklahoma-Texas border. And the first thing that was really noticeable when we landed was the weather. And they were calling for really unseasonably cold temperatures for game day, which was going to be in 2 days, Saturday. And so we flew in, we went to the hotel, we checked in, and then we went and practiced just to, run around and do some stuff, get the blood flowing, get the jet lag out. And it was interesting in the fact that we didn't practice on a football field. We practiced in a park. No yard lines, obviously, but it was nice Bermuda grass, and we got some good work in. So that night we went back to the hotel, and throughout the entire season, we had a tradition called Thursday Night Blowout. And Thursday Night Blowout was by position. The players went to bars and tipped some beers. And the offensive linemen and the defensive linemen had their bar, and no one else could go there. The receivers and quarterbacks had their own bar, and no one else could go there, and that was the corner pocket. And we did this every Thursday night for the entire season, and our first two playoff games were at home in the mini dome, so we were able to continue that tradition in the playoffs. So here we are in Texas, and football players are superstitious. And once you get a routine going and it's successful for you, it's really hard to break. So a group of us went to the coaches Thursday evening and said, this is what we do, what we've done on Thursday night. Tonight's Thursday. Would you let us continue our Thursday night blowout if we promise to stay in our hotel rooms, stay on the hotel grounds, and when bed check rolls around, we're done? Our coaches trusted us, and they gave us the green light. So a few of us jumped in one of the rental cars that our support staff drove, and we went out looking for Lone Star beer. Lone Star beer. When you're in Texas, that's what you drink. Couldn't find it in Pocatello, Idaho, but in Texas, that's what we were going to drink for Thursday night blowout. We went to a number of convenience stores. We went to liquor stores, there wasn't one freaking place in Wichita Falls, Texas that sold Lone Star beer. So we had to fly to Texas for Thursday night blowout and drink Coors and Budweiser. But we made do. So we got the beer, we brought it back to the rooms, and proceeded to do the Thursday night blowout, which was tip a few cold ones, tell some lies, have some yucks, play cards, talk shit, and do our thing. So that went down Thursday night. Friday now comes around, day before the game, and we're going to have a practice that afternoon, but now we're going to practice in the stadium where the game's going to be played. And as we pull up to the stadium, you could see the trucks for ABC in the parking lot, and they were setting up the cameras for the game. This game was on national TV. ABC had done a national broadcast, televised broadcast of our game against South Carolina State the week before. And here they are again, and they're setting up their cameras on Friday. So they've got like these big platforms, maybe 3 on each sideline, like the 20-yard line, the 50-yard line, and the opposite 20-yard line. And they've got those big TV cameras up on these boxes where they could stand up above the players, and get a pretty high angle on it and film the game. So they're setting them up. We practice. We do our thing. And after practice, I walked over to one of the camera guys who looked like a guy that might be manning the camera the next day. And I said, hey, listen, I wear jersey number 10. I'm from Seattle. My mom's going to be watching the game on TV up in Seattle. It would mean the world to her if you could get me on camera with a close-up. And he said, yeah, sure. And, I thought, yeah, right. And didn't think anything of it. So that night, we had the National Championship Bowl banquet, and it was us in Eastern Kentucky. We went to this nice restaurant. They had the big long table up in front for all the big shots and the dignitaries and the bowl sponsors. And they also had at that front table the 2 announcers for ABC the next day. So the lead announcer was Dave Dial. And the guy that was doing color is the legendary Arkansas Razorback football coach, Frank Broyles. Now, the table that I was at was up in front and right in front of Dial and Broyles. And Frank Broyles had a few cocktails that afternoon. He was lit up, big red nose, watery eyes. He was laughing and giggling and, telling stories. And I got a big kick out of listening to him and watching him. Good old boy from Arkansas. I also got a kick out of Eastern Kentucky's players who tried to bow their neck and get big on us, try to intimidate us, giving us hard ass looks, talking a little bit of smack as we were leaving. And, our players just looked at those guys and went, yeah, right. We knew we were going to kick their ass. So the next day, game day rolls around, cold, really, really cold with the wind coming across the plain there. And it was kind of uncomfortable. We kicked their butt pretty good. And in the fourth quarter now, as the game's winding down, they got a bunch of locals that are sitting behind our bench on our sideline and mixed in with a bunch of Idaho State fans, but a whole bunch of good old boy locals. And they start asking us on the sideline if we'd be interested in selling them parts of our equipment, things that we were wearing. For example, I had a baseball cap that I wore that I sold to a guy for $50 cash. And then I wore 2 wristbands on each arm. I sold the wristbands for $25. So that's $75 right there that I stuck in the waistband of my game pants. And I had to think long and hard about the offer for my helmet. It was in the 200s, 250 maybe for my helmet. And I made a good decision and didn't do that. So after the game, I'm milling around the field and I've got cash stuffed in my pants, which was pretty funny. And we went in the locker room and celebrated the national championship, got on the buses and went to the airport, boarded the jets, and we flew back to Pocatello. Now, the boosters that had gone to Texas to watch the game put about 3 or 4 cases of champagne on our planes, and we had a fun time flying back to Pocatello. But when we flew in to the airport there in Pocatello, it was truly an amazing sight and an amazing experience. As we are coming into land, you could see just a mass of people out on the tarmac. Now, this is 1981, Idaho. They didn't have the updated, sophisticated airports where the plane would land and taxi up to the terminal, and then the passengers would get off the plane and walk through a tunnel, and they're in the terminal. The way that they did it back then was we taxied to a stop about 50 yards from the terminal. They wheeled out stairs, and we exited the plane, walked down the stairs, and then had to walk across the tarmac to get into the terminal. Well, the tarmac was packed with people that were partying and celebrating. And what I remember most about that was as we came down those steps out of the jet, the crowd parted and made like a tunnel. So our coaches and players walked through this tunnel of people all the way to the terminal. And like I said, it was about a 50-yard walk. In 50 yards of walking, I probably drank 4 or 5 beers. People were shoving beers and flasks and fifths and all kinds of stuff being passed around out there and partying and celebrating. But it was even crazier once we got in the terminal. When we stepped foot in the terminal, it was wall-to-wall people. They estimated there was about 2,500 to close to 3,000 people there at the airport that night. It was absolutely insane and just a blast. I don't think for the rest of my time in Pocatello that I had to pay for a beer. It was really cool. What a great memory. Got one last story attached to the national championship, and that was the following weekend at the Holiday Inn. They had a big indoor pool area. They held weddings there and brought bands in and stuff. Big, huge place. Well, they also had a bunch of big screen TVs around there. And what they were going to do on a Sunday morning was they were going to replay in its entirety the ABC telecast of the championship game. And so some buddies came over to my place and we went down to the Holiday Inn. I drove my Ford Pinto. It was a hell of a car, that Ford Pinto. So the one thing about Pocatello, when it snows, the first time it snows in the winter, the snow never melts until the springtime temperatures thaw it out. So what happens is what falls hardens. And so on the roads, you've got the tires of the cars that pack the snow down, but the space in between the tires, okay, underneath the chassis of the car, that thing is built up about a foot tall of just rock hard snowpack. And it would act as like a monorail track. Okay. And so you're driving down the street, and if you happen to veer right or left and your tires hit that snowpack in the middle, that monorail trail, it would jar you and knock you back onto the street. So that sets the scene for what happened. So cruising in my Pinto, we're on a residential street, and about 30 yards up in front of me on the right-hand side is a parked police car with two policemen in it. And I'm driving, we're getting closer, and I hit the monorail track, and it started taking me right at the back left side of the police car. And there's no way that I was going to steer back away to avoid that. All right. So I started pumping on the brakes lightly, but we got black ice, and my wheels just basically locked. And now it is a true free fall ride where the force of gravity is just drifting the car, and it's going with the monorail track, and it's leading right to the cop car, and we're going, oh shit. Boom. We jam into the back of the car. No one was hurt. Both police officers jumped out of the car, came around to the driver's side, rolled the window down, and we were all wearing Letterman's jackets. So they knew we were football players. I think they probably recognized one or two of us in the car. And one of the guys goes, hey, understandable, be careful. Oh, and by the way, hell of a win, boys, hell of a win. And so rolled up the window and went down to the Holiday Inn and watched the game. That was not the last time that my Letterman's jacket or the national championship ring that we got about a month later, that wasn't the last time that those two things saved my ass in Pocatello, Idaho. Oh, and by the way, at the end of the game, watching it at the Holiday Inn, players on the field, celebrating, all that kind of stuff, ABC camera whoosh, on number 10, Keith Simons, close up of me for about 5 seconds or so. I couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe it. So thank you, Mr. Cameraman. That's a great memory, and that's Flashback Friday. This is QB Unfiltered. Remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.